and just give it a minute or a couple of seconds to get more people on here before we dive too far into it. But let's kick things off. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's day 3 of 4 of our program summit. We're so happy to have you here for today's session. We're officially over the halfway mark through this summit. We have had some incredible sessions so far. Day 1, we learned about building an email list with Megan Walker, such a great kind of foundational step before launching. And yesterday we had the incredible Lori Kennedy walk us through important considerations for actually building our program. And today is day 3, and we are going to be addressing one of the most popular areas of confusion and overwhelm when it comes to offering a new offering like a program. It is by far one of the most popular questions that come from practitioners in our community. And through many iterations, that question is basically saying, how the heck do I price my program? So it's a multifaceted question with a ton of consideration. So we knew that we had to bring in an amazing expert to help ease our overwhelm, walk us through some strategies for setting prices. But by now you probably know the drill. On day 3, I'm going to run us through a few housekeeping items before we intro today's amazing guest speaker. So today's session will run approximately 90 minutes. So we do have some time reserved at the end for Q&A, about 30 minutes, just kind of depending on the volume of questions that come in from everyone. We are recording, so there will be a replay sent to your inbox. Keep an eye out for that sometime later today. If you'd like to revisit this session or you can't stay the entire duration, you will be able to rewatch today's session. We've also sent along work-along PDF books. So those were created in collaboration with our featured experts so that you can take notes and follow along with each of the sessions. We have sent those through email as well, but I am going to drop a link in the chat just in case somebody doesn't have that handy. If they would like to pull that up, now would be the perfect time. You will also notice when you open that PDF book that there is a button for you to copy that over to Google. So if that's your preference to be able to take notes, have that saved in your Google Docs, go ahead and hit that button and make a copy. And last but not least, questions. So please make good use of that Q&A box. We welcome and encourage all of your questions today. And again, we'll be saving those for the designated Q&A portion of today's session. So we'd appreciate if you use the Q&A box for the questions and do your best to refrain from putting them in the chat. The chat has been on fire the last couple of days, so this just helps us, not unintentionally miss some of the questions that are coming through. But let's get into today's intro. Put a hello or a hi, Laura, in the chat to welcome in Laura Schoenfeld for day 3. Everybody say hi to Laura. Laura Schoenfeld is a registered dietitian. She is a women's health expert and business coach for integrative and functional dietitians and nutritionists. And her mission is to educate women on how to nourish their bodies, mind, and spirit. She also helps nutrition professionals grow and scale a successful business. So really what this means is that Laura is a practitioner just like you. She has been in your shoes, she is in your shoes, and she gets it. She knows what it takes to be a successful practitioner. And with all of her years of experience, she has become a go-to source of expertise and inspiration for the health and wellness practitioner community. And today she is here to help demystify pricing. Like I said at the beginning, I know and I can relate so much to how challenging this can be to figure out. So Laura is going to teach us strategies to create win-win pricing for your programs. So welcome, Laura. We're so happy to have you here. I'm going to let you take it away for the group.
All right. Excuse me. Well, thank you so much and welcome everybody. I'm so excited to see so many people here. This is actually my first public talk since I had my first baby in June. So I'm like so excited and a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh, this is like a really big group and a really active group. So I am pumped to be able to chat with you guys today. So I have obviously a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen. And let me just make sure I have my notes in the chat up. All right, can you guys just let me know that you can see the title, my face on that slide, just to make sure it's broadcasting the correct. Okay, cool. Awesome. And so like was shared in the introduction, we're going to be talking about how to create win-win pricing for your programs and services. And I know that this summit is really focused on program design. However, pricing is something that will affect any type of offer that you create, whether that is one-on-one to a group coaching program to an online course, all the way down to like things like ebooks and anything that you're charging money for. So we really want to make sure that we're creating pricing that works for both you and your clients, and it's not just either working for one or the other. So if you don't know me already, my name is Schoenfeld. I'm a business coach for health and nutrition professionals and the creator of the Nutrition Business Accelerator. And I really help big-hearted health and nutrition professionals attract, convert, and serve their ideal clients so they can exponentially grow their income and impact while loving the work that they do. So I have been in business since 2014. Most of that time was as a multi-six-figure functional and integrative nutrition expert. And now in the last couple of years, I pivoted to business coaching for health and wellness experts as well. And as you guys know, I only have an hour to teach you as much as I possibly can about pricing your services. So I encourage you to get out a notebook, get a pen, block out any distractions that you might have, and just get ready to listen and learn, because we're going to move really fast. There's a lot I'm going to cover today. I'm also originally from New Jersey, so I talk fast. And the good news is there will be a replay available, so don't worry if you miss anything, and we'll have time for questions at the end. Now, you guys are here because you want to learn how to price your programs and services. And I know that this is a really big topic of confusion and questions for people. And I understand why, because it is one of the biggest decisions that you'll make when it comes to creating your services. And I just want to share a little bit about why this is such an important topic. I mean, I think you guys probably understand why pricing matters, but I want to look beyond just the basics of why why you have to have a dollar amount on what you're selling. So the way you set your pricing really affects your quality of life. It's going to affect how you show up and serve your clients, your community, and it's going to allow you to be the best version of yourself without having to struggle financially, because really nobody benefits from you struggling, and you showing up as your best self is actually going to serve your clients and your community even better. Your pricing also allows your clients the opportunity to invest in themselves, to commit to their growth, and ensure that they're going to have the best experience possible, which includes getting the best results possible from working with you. And when pricing is done well, it makes it easier for you to grow your business, get more yeses on sales calls, and get more enrollments during launches, which then ends up allowing you to serve more people through your calling as a health professional, which I know all of you are here to do. You're all doing this because you're passionate about what you do and you want to serve as many people as possible, and your pricing will affect your ability to do that. Now, I'm going to get a little spicy sometimes because I have some strong opinions about the kind of stuff that people talk about in the, especially the business coaching space for coaches and consultants in general. At no point during this presentation am I going to tell you to charge what you're worth. I find that statement to be one of the least helpful recommendations for pricing out there. My perspective is that your pricing has nothing to do with what your worth is. So if that's something that you've heard before, let me know in the comments, or if that's what you've been trying to like figure out, well, what is my worth? Or, how do I decide what my worth is? We're just going to throw that out, because this is not about figuring out what your worth is. It has everything to do with the value of the service that you're providing and the value that you bring to the people you want to serve. But we're going to talk more about that later, of course. I just wanted to set the stage for what you're going to experience today. Now, real quick, I want to tell you about why this topic matters to me personally. For me, nailing my pricing and making great money in my business is what allowed me to take a fully paid maternity leave this year. And that allowed me to not have to rush back to work before I was ready. And it gave me the time I wanted and needed to spend with my new baby, to recover from the challenging experience of pregnancy and birth, and to really get to enjoy motherhood. And I am the sole income provider for my family right now. So that was really important for me to have pricing that allowed me to have financial flexibility, to make the money I needed to make in order to pay myself, to pay my husband who works with me, and to be able to take that time off as we learned how to become parents to a newborn, which, as any of you have kids know, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of, it's a very steep learning curve, and being able to take that time off was super, super valuable. So all of this was possible for me because I priced my programs in a way that was a win-win for me and my clients, because this wouldn't have worked out if I had been consistently undercharging, or if I had charged so much that people were saying no to working with me. So maybe you don't necessarily think about pricing as being something that affects your family, but it really does. And I just wanted to share my story to give you a sense of how important this is for you to figure out. So I want you to imagine now what will be possible in your life when you're charging enough to reach your financial goals. And how will that affect how you show up and serve your clients and community? Because if you're running yourself ragged and undercharging all the time, you're not going to be able to show up the way that you want to show up and serve. Or think about how it'll affect how you connect with your family and friends. So I just shared with you a minute ago that my pricing allowed me to have that 2 to 3 months of time to prepare for birth, to go through the birth experience, to recover, and then to really get to spend a lot of quality time with my baby and not have to worry about coming to work right away. So I just want you to be thinking about that. And if you want to share in the chat what comes to mind for you, let me know. I really love to hear how this is affecting you, or how this will affect you, because the more personal you make it for yourself, the more it's really going to be something meaningful for you to be working on. Okay, so now you can type the word "I'm ready" into the chat if you're ready to nail your prices for your health business. I love doing this because you're basically committing to the process when you type "I'm ready." Even if I don't see it, you know that you're writing it down. So you typing it into the chat is going to really solidify your commitment to going through this process. Awesome. And I'm just getting over a cold, so if I have to mute and cough for a little bit, I apologize. But good, I'm seeing lots and lots of "I'm ready." So I'm ready too, so let's get started. So now that you know how important it is to nail your pricing, let's talk about what the concept of price really means, because it's really not just about the amount that you charge for your programs and services. Yes, the exact dollars and cents and whatever you want to charge is relevant and is important, but it's not really the most important thing. And I'm actually going to take a different angle in this presentation today that maybe isn't what you were expecting, but is going to be really helpful for you to figure out the pricing for your stuff. So when we talk about pricing, what we're really talking about here is your offer. Let me know in the chat if you've ever thought about it this way, that pricing is really more about your offer and not just about the dollars and cents. And this is what I'm here to help you understand better today, is the concept of a good offer, and to be able to really create the best offer possible so that the pricing is super easy for you. Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like some people have heard this and some people it's new. So I hope that all of you will learn something today. So why do we need to nail our offer? Now, this is something that I spend a lot of time working with my clients inside of my Nutrition Business Accelerator to help them figure out, because it is so important. And that's because you cannot grow your business on a bad offer. I challenge you to show me one successful business that has a bad offer. You probably can't, and if you can, I'd love to hear it, but basically everybody that you know, that you follow, that you are inspired by, that has the kind of business that you want to have, has at least one really solid offer for their business. And the nice thing about a great offer is that it can actually make up for mediocre sales and marketing skills. So how many of you feel like you're not very good at sales and marketing? And not to say that you're not working on getting better, but are you like, I'm not so into sales, I'm not that great at marketing? Yeah, a lot of people saying me. Somebody says sales and marketing is so hard. And yes, listen, like, it is challenging. It's not something we get taught in school. It's why I based my whole business on teaching health professionals sales and marketing skills. But the cool thing is when your offer is really good, you can actually be a mediocre salesperson and still get tons of sales. So that's why the offer is so important. And the better the offer that you create, the higher that you can price it. And we'll talk later about why this matters to you and your clients but it is something that is going to actually affect how much you can charge for your services. Now, before we get into the conversation about offers, I want to remind you guys that you only need one great offer to have a very, very successful business. I have lots of friends in the health and wellness space that actually have $1 million+ businesses, so 7-figure businesses selling one thing. And they're not necessarily selling high ticket programs or anything like that. So you can have a very, very financially successful business with one really good offer. And to keep things simple, I really want you to be thinking about what's the one offer you want to be determining the price for today. Once your one offer is profitable, of course, you can build out different offers, lower ticket, higher ticket, that kind of thing. But I always encourage my clients to not get overcomplicated right off the bat, because it is a lot of work to even get one offer off the ground. And I'd rather you put all your energy towards one thing. Okay, so there are 8 core elements of an irresistible offer that I teach my clients inside of my Nutrition Business Accelerator program. I'm going to show you all 8 of those today, but since we have limited time, I'm not going to have time to go through every single one. If you want to learn more about all of them, of course, I'd be happy to have you inside of the MBA program, which is open to any health professional, not just nutritionists. But we're going to go over them in higher level detail, and then I'm going to get into some specifics with a few of them. So the 8 P's of an irresistible offer start with your person, and your person is who is your offer specifically for. Some of you may consider that your niche. I will talk about this in a minute. It's part of your niche, but it's not your entire niche, but this is who you want to work with. So maybe this is new moms, maybe this is retired people, maybe this is college students, lots of different people that you could potentially be serving for your offer. The next P is problem, and that is what specific external and internal problem or problems does your offer solve. This is the other part of your niche that you really need to be figuring out in order to create an effective offer. And we'll get into more details about these in just a few minutes. The third P is potential. Potential is what specific external and internal result does your offer provide? Again, a very important thing to be figuring out and very clear on before you start to sell anything. But this one is really the transformation that your program is going to offer people. The fourth P is package. Package is what are the details and deliverables of this offer. This can be things like private sessions, group coaching. This can relate to how long the session or package lasts, if you're including anything. We could go into a whole hour on package construction, but just know that this is exactly the deliverables that you're going to be providing to your paid customers. I think this is fifth, right? The fifth P is price, exactly what we're talking about today. And this is where you answer the question, what are the investment options for this offer, which can include payment plans, if you're going to do a pay in full discount, a standard versus a VIP level, basically any sort of options when it comes to your payments. The sixth P is perks. And that is what are the bonuses included in this offer and at what price points? Bonuses are a really awesome part of your offer that can make it even more attractive for people. And it's something that a lot of people don't think to include in the health and wellness space. The seventh P is pressure, and that is what is the urgency or deadline on this offer? Now, I don't love the word pressure, but the fact is that was the best P word for what we're talking about. But this is basically when you have some kind of limitation on time availability or a change in the price or the total number of spots. There's some kind of deadline on making the decision for the person to join your program. And then the eighth P is promise. So promise is what is the guarantee and what are the terms of your guarantee? I hope that all of you know that you should be having some kind of legally binding contract that people are signing when they join your programs, whether that's a one-on-one program or a group program. Anytime somebody's buying something from you, you should really have a terms and conditions document that they're agreeing to, and that's where the promise information is going to be shared. So like I said, those are the 8 Ps, and we're going to go into more detail on 4 of them today because these are the ones that are going to affect the price the most. So the first 2 are the person and the problem, which is who specifically is your offer for and what specific problem does your offer solve. package, which is where are the details and deliverables of this offer, and price, what are the investment options for this offer. So when we talk about the person, again, this is who specifically do you help with this specific offer. Now, if you're going to have more than one offer for your business, just be aware that every offer you create needs to have a particular person in mind, and it could be something where you're actually niching down further from your main niche. So you want to be thinking about, is there anything that makes this person unique that is relevant to the way that you solve their problem? So if somebody's a mom, that's going to affect how you help them with a particular problem that you solve versus if they're a single 22-year-old that has unlimited time and energy to focus on their health, right? You're also going to be thinking about who is this offer not for. So it's not excluding people in the sense of wanting to, turn people away, but it kind of ends up being turning people away. You just want to be really clear about who's a good fit and a not a good fit for the service you're providing. And this is especially crucial when you're doing a group program or a course where you can't customize things as much, because not everybody's going to be a fit. So you really want to get clear about that ideal person for the program, because it's going to make everybody's experience better. And then with problem, again, what is the specific problem that you're solving with this specific offer? This can be the big problem that you solve in your overall business, or it could be a smaller problem related to that overall problem. We go a ton into detail on this in my program, so just know I am skimming and I'm going pretty fast, but basically everything you create needs to solve a problem for a particular type of person. And there's different layers of problems that you can work on, whether that's in your free or paid content. Now, if you're looking to create some kind of DIY course, typically that's going to solve a smaller problem for people, whereas something like one-on-one or a more high-touch group coaching experience will cover a bigger problem. And when you're determining what the problem is, you want to be identifying the external problem, which is the signs or symptoms that they're having that problem, and the internal problem, which is how the person feels about the problem that they're experiencing. So if you help new moms with poor energy, then energy is the external problem. And the internal problem is feeling frustrated that they feel like they got hit by a bus when they woke up in the morning. And you also want to be thinking about, how does your ideal client already know that this is a problem worth solving? We're going to get into this in more detail when we talk about the actual offer itself. But this is so important that your person that you're working with already is aware that this is a problem that they have. Now, I was mentioning before, some of you might have heard the word niche and think niche is the person that you work with. And it is, but it's also very much related to the problem that you solve for that person. And I would actually argue that identifying the core problem in an effective way is more important than identifying the person. So I'm going to go fast through this, but basically when we're choosing the niche we're going to focus on in our offer, that's a critical decision, because that is going to affect not only your price point, but also how you can sell it. It doesn't matter how amazing your program is if there is not already demand for the solution that you're providing, you will struggle to sell it. So you have to be selling something that people already want. So if you've created a program or a one-on-one service or a course and it's not selling well, or maybe it's not selling at all, you need to ask yourself and be honest with yourself, is there already a market for the problem that you're solving? I go hard on this because I've made this mistake before, where I created the program I wanted to create rather than being really clear that there was already demand for that problem. And so that's why I want to make sure you guys can avoid the mistakes that I've made. So there's 4 different ways you can know if your market is a good market that's going to be one that actually will buy your stuff. The first is that they're in pain. The more pain somebody's in, the more demand they're going to have for your service. And that is going to make it easier for you to sell. And it's probably going to make it easier for you to raise your prices. When we say pain, I don't just mean physical pain, although it can be physical pain. It can also be emotional pain, frustration. It can be the pain of the impact it's having on their life. There's a lot of different ways you can define pain that somebody is in with the problem that they're going to be asking you for help with. But the more pain they're in, the more they're going to be willing to spend money on solving it. Another thing to consider is if your market has money. Now, they don't have to be like 1%ers, top income earners, but if you're trying to reach out to college students, that might be a little bit harder to sell than like if you're working with professionals or retirees, somebody who might have a little bit more wiggle room on their budget. So you have to be considering that, not to say that you can't work with people with a lower budget, but that is going to affect the pricing that you can charge for your services. You also want to ask yourself, is your audience easy to find or target? I had a challenge with this when I worked with clients with amenorrhea, because finding people with amenorrhea, especially with like paid ads, is very, very difficult. It's something that you have to really just, I don't know, hashtags and that kind of thing. Like it just was not an easy thing to find people that were dealing with it. Whereas something like pregnancy or fertility challenges is something easier to find people. So you want to make sure that you're not picking a problem or a niche that is just like, I have no idea where these people hang out. I don't know where I would find them. I don't know how I'd actually get in front of them. And then the fourth area is that you want to make sure that the market is growing. I really feel like in the health space, this is pretty much baked in. So most of you are not going to have to worry about this. Sadly, as we all know, most people are not getting healthier over time. Our society is getting less healthy. So this is usually not one that you really have to worry about, but it is something to consider. You don't want to be creating a program for a market that is dying, essentially. So if you want to learn more about niching, I do actually have a special offer for you guys that are watching the presentation live and participating during November 2020. You can use the code PB2022 if you want to save 50% or just under $150 on my profitable nutrition niche workshop. We did move fast through this, and this workshop's like 2.5 to 3 hours long, and it's just on niching. So if you want to go into more detail on that, this is an opportunity for you to do so at a discount. But I wanted to make sure we touched on niching, because niching is one of those things that a lot of wellness professionals totally miss the mark on. And that directly impacts not only what you can charge for your services, but also how well you can sell them. So that's why I wanted to make sure we didn't skip that part. Okay, so now that we've talked about person and problem, let's talk briefly about package. The package is, what is the specific service that you're providing to your client or customer? And this includes any deliverables that you're including, which we're going to go into an exercise on identifying deliverables later, so just wait. But just some of the most common examples of health and nutrition program deliverables are things like one-on-one consulting. A lot of my clients do a hybrid one-on-one and online course combo, which is a very profitable and great way to sell your services. Group coaching, which would be more one-to-many on a live call. Teaching and education, which can be virtual or in real life. A lot of times that's going to be more of your curriculum for a program. Done for you programs and courses. So that could be things like meal plans, workout plans, DIY courses that don't involve you at all. And things like community support. You can use Facebook groups. I use a service called Circle for our community, and that's another deliverable that you can include. Now, this is not a full list of all the deliverables that are possible. It's just some of the ones that are very common in nutrition and health programs. And I typically recommend for new business owners to start with one-on-one consulting. And the reason for that is because you can customize the program and package for the individual, which makes it easier to sell. It allows you to have more personal interaction, which allows you to get to know your ideal client better. ICI stands for Ideal Client Avatar. It gives you an opportunity to hone your skills and be more deeply involved in the process to get your clients' results. When you're in that high touch one-on-one environment, it often means you can help somebody get better or faster results. Not always, but that tends to be the case. And when there's more of you, you can charge more because they're just getting more access to you. And the more of you they get, the more they should be paying. Now, once you have gotten your one-on-one offer working, you're getting great results for people, you're selling things, it's working, that's when you can take that experience and develop and refine your signature process for helping people get results to create your group and online programs. Now, I know I just said to start with one-on-one sessions as your core offer when you're a new business owner, but I also want to remind you that this is not where you should hang out for the rest of your career as a nutrition or health professional. My recommendation is at a bare minimum to move into that scalable hybrid model as quickly as possible, which is where you combine your one-on-one services with some kind of online curriculum that can be delivered through Practice Better. So that's one of the really awesome things about the Practice Better platform, especially all the updates that they've just created, is that you can serve a one-on-one client and have curriculum that they can go through all in one-stop shop, right? And what that allows you to do is not only to serve your one-on-one clients more effectively, but it also gives you the opportunity to then also sell a group program or a course using that same curriculum. This allows you to minimize how much time you're spending teaching and educating on your one-on-one calls. And it allows you to focus more on coaching and problem solving in those calls. So that way people can actually get more progress in less time with less of you, and you can provide a more comprehensive solution. So I really feel like the conventional, like pure time for dollars model for health businesses is broken. I don't think it's the best way for you to sell your services. And I actually don't think it's the best way for your clients to receive those services either. I believe we can help our clients so much more effectively when we combine additional training and tools inside of a program portal like Practice Better, in addition to our one-on-one time, which is there for the customization and coaching experience. This also allows us to work more efficiently, serve more people in less time, and it actually allows us to grow our profitability. And you don't have to create your hybrid program right away. It is something that you can build out over time, but the faster you're able to create something like that, the more scalable and profitable your business can be. So I just want you guys to be thinking about that, because I know not all of you are going to be ready to necessarily go straight into a course or a group coaching program. But if you can at least use the program's platform to create curriculum for your one-on-one clients, that is something that can allow you to actually raise your prices for your one-on-one services, or cut down how much one-on-one time you're spending for that same amount of money. All right, so we're going to get into the part that you've all been waiting for, which is price. And that's where you answer the question, what is the financial investment for your program or services? So there's lots of different ways that you can come up with this exact number. Some of the questions you can ask yourself are, what is the cost of alternative services? What is the cost of not solving this problem? So a lot of times that's like long-term consequences that they'll experience if they don't solve the problem now. What would solving this problem be worth to your ideal client? And that's something that is going to depend on the person you're working with and the problem that you solve. Another factor to consider is, how much do you need to charge so that the client takes the program seriously? As you guys can imagine, paying $10 for something would probably not get you as motivated as paying $1,000 for something. So the more people pay, the more they actually take action and pay attention in general. Not everybody, but that tends to be the situation. And something else I want you to be considering is, what do you want to earn on an annual basis? So we're talking about win-win pricing here. Part of that win-win pricing is supporting your financial needs. And later on, I'm going to share with you a resource that I've created that's going to help you figure this out. But one of the starting points for figuring out the actual dollar amount is to figure out, what are your financial goals and how much do you want to work in order to reach those financial goals, and then reverse engineering your pricing backwards from there. Now, I just wanted to do a quick note on payment plans, because that was one of the topics that was requested for me to cover. There are two schools of thoughts on payment plan structure. The first is that the payment plan should add up to the exact same amount as the pay in full option, or that payment plan should add a small convenience fee, something like 10 to 15% on top of the single payment cost. My perspective is that you should incentivize paying in full, and that can either be through a price break, where they're actually paying a little less than if they pay on a payment plan, or by offering a special bonus that's only given to people that pay in full. The reason I suggest that is because you are taking on a risk by offering a payment plan. And so it's very beneficial for you to have your clients pay in full. And that's why you should look for ways to make it beneficial for them too. I'm not against payment plans. And obviously I think access is really important. But the fact is that as a business owner, when you take a payment plan, you're risking failed payments, you're risking somebody bailing on the payments, credit card declines, that kind of stuff. And that is going to hurt your business if everybody's doing payment plans and you're not necessarily collecting 100% of the payments. So the more pay in fulls you can get, the better that's going to work for your business. Now, there are financing services that exist You guys can Google this. I'm not going to make any specific recommendations for companies here, but there's a lot of really cool companies out there that actually supply payment plan servicing. What that means is that you can actually get the full payment, but then the customer is paying through a payment plan. Typically, this is only for higher ticket stuff, so you can't necessarily do this for something lower ticket, but this is an option for you if you don't necessarily want to deal with payment plans, but you want to make that offer available to your customers because you know that payment plans make it easier for them to say yes. So that is something that you can look into. But if you're going to use Practice Better for your payment plans, obviously, there's tons of things you can set up to do that with the tech. And if you want to charge extra, I believe right now the way to do that is to create a second offer that's a higher price. I don't know if there's anything coming in the pipeline to make it so that you can have a service charge on a payment plan. But that is something that I feel is very important to at least have some kind of incentive, even if it's not a financial incentive, if you're going to offer extended payment plans. Now, when we decide on the actual dollar amount for our price point, we want to hit the sweet spot between being a more premium price point and what I call undercharging for the program. And what undercharging means is that your client is getting more value from the offer than what they're paying. It doesn't mean that you are undervaluing your services. It doesn't mean that you're scraping by financially, living off of ramen noodles. It just means that you are providing more value than the client is paying from a dollar amount perspective. So one of the best ways to actually figure this out is to figure out what you want to charge for your program and then add a 0 to the end of that. And then think about what could I do to make this program worth 10 times what somebody is paying for it. So if you want to charge $2,000 for your program, you should work from the goal of creating $20,000 worth of value. Now, I know sometimes this can be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to create $20,000 worth of value in a health program? Something to remember is that the value does not have to just be in the time frame of the program itself, but you can consider how the value is extended across somebody's lifetime. If you're working with someone for 6 months, but the work you do affects them for 6 years or 20 years, that is something that you can consider when it comes to the value that you're bringing to the table. A great example of this is if you work in the fertility space and you help someone who was previously challenged with fertility to get pregnant and have a healthy child. I would argue that's worth $20,000 over the course of that person's life to have a healthy child that they might not have had otherwise. You can also consider the fact that when you're working with a conventional medical model, people are spending $30,000 to $60,000 on IVF to get pregnant. So you can already see that there's other services that charge tens of thousands of dollars to get that result. So if you feel very confident that you can help that person get that result, then I feel very strongly that most people would argue that is worth $20,000 to get that outcome. So since there are people paying 30 to 60 plus to get pregnant, you could argue paying $2,000 is actually a huge bargain for them to get that same result. Now, I want to talk a little bit about premium pricing because this is something that I teach my clients and it can be a little bit of a controversial topic. But the fact is that if you're aiming to be the cheapest in your market, or if you're even just looking at other people to determine what your price should be because you want to charge the average amount, what's going to end up happening is that you're always going to be competing on price. This is a race to the bottom because if somebody wants to sell more than you, they're just going to charge less than you. And if you want to sell more, you're going to have to lower your prices. And basically, it's just going to end up being whoever is charging the least is the one that's getting the sale. Obviously, that's not good for you as the business owner. And so I strongly encourage you not to look at what others are charging as an indicator of what you should charge. Now, it's okay to look at what they're charging to get an understanding of what the market is willing to cover, looking at complementary services, then seeing what they charge to get a sense for what the general pricing range is to solve the problem. But you shouldn't be basing your pricing just by looking at what other people charge and then being like, I guess that's what I'm going to charge too. And the other thing to keep in mind, we'll talk about this later, but if you're trying to go really low in your pricing because you think that's going to be the best way to sell more, just know that the only people that make good money off of very low ticket programs either have a huge audience to sell to or spend a lot on paid advertising. So yes, you can have a very successful business with a low ticket offer, but there are some factors that a lot of times make it very difficult to be successful with. And, paid advertising is getting more expensive, more difficult. And I would much rather have a program that doesn't need to spend a lot of money on advertising to be able to sell. So ideally, when it comes to your price, you want to price your services high enough that somebody would stop to consider why your program is more expensive than others. So when you're charging more, somebody looks at you and they think, well, there must be something special about what they have to offer because otherwise they wouldn't be charging as much as they do. And that allows you to put your services in a class of its own rather than just a commodity that leads to price shopping. You don't want somebody coming to you and being like, well, I would work with her, but so-and-so is charging, $300 less, so I'm going to go with them. That's what we want to avoid when it comes to creating our pricing for our offers. Now, I do want to show you a real world example to explain why premium pricing is also good for your clients and not just you. So don't spoil it if you've heard this before, but there is a study where people were given 3 different glasses of wine and they were told how much each bottle cost. So maybe one bottle was $10, one bottle was $25, and one bottle was $50. And they were asked to rate the flavor and the quality of the wine that they were drinking. So they did find that when people were trying these 3 different wines, typically they rated the most expensive one as the best tasting. Now, the thing that is surprising about this is that it turns out all 3 glasses were the exact same wine. So there was no difference in the flavor at all because it was the same bottle, but people perceived that the more expensive wine tasted better because people associate higher prices with a better experience. Now, before we get into more about this, I want to make sure you guys know I'm not saying that we should be selling snake oil, that we should be price gouging and ripping people off and selling them crap. Like, that is not what I'm saying. I want you guys to have a really high quality service, and you don't have to have this like exorbitant price point in order to make good money. But the goal is to create the best possible experience for somebody at the highest price point possible, while also taking into consideration what you want to provide support-wise and what's going to work best for people to actually get results. And as that wine example showed, people literally experience the service as better quality when they've paid more for it. It's kind of like the concept of the placebo effect. Because they paid more, they're just already experiencing it as a higher experience. That also means you got to show up and actually deliver on what you're charging for. But I just wanted to give you this perspective on how your pricing can actually affect how your customers experience the service or the program that you're providing. Now, you guys might have heard this before, this concept of when people pay, they pay attention. And I know we don't always want to think that this is true, but I know for me personally, I've had this experience before. I have a friend who does a different type of business coaching, and she gave me one of her coaching programs that she typically charges $5,000 for. And I tell you, I did not even open that program once. I feel really bad about it, but I literally never even opened it. Versus if I go and spend $5,000 of my own money on a program, you better believe I'm going to show up and take advantage of what I've purchased. And your clients are the exact same way. When people pay an amount that makes them a little bit uncomfortable, it doesn't have to be something that they have to, get a second mortgage on their house for, but it should be a little bit uncomfortable. They're naturally going to have more emotional and mental buy-in to the program. And more buy-in means that they're more likely to take action on what they're learning, and more action leads to more results. And we know that's true, not only in the health space, but in the business space. If you're not taking action, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. And one of the best ways to motivate yourself to take action is to put some skin in the game. And the great thing is higher prices also allow you to provide a higher quality service. That means you can provide more access to you. You can include some of the more, I don't want to say expensive, but obviously things like testing and supplements can start to add up price-wise. And if you can include that kind of stuff in your program because you're charging enough for it, you can potentially actually help somebody get a better result from the service. And it can also help you pay a team to support you, so that way you can make sure your customer service experience is really great. And what this means is that when you combine a better service with better results and more profit because you're charging more, this is what creates that win-win experience for everybody. Okay, so that's really, I kind of want to pause there for a second because this is really, really important. I titled this presentation Win-Win Pricing for you and your customers. This is what I encourage you guys to create, a great experience that pays you what you want to make it worth it for you, and also helps your clients get the absolute best possible results. Now, another topic that apparently has come up a lot and was requested that I include in here is the ethics of pricing. Because I know, when I teach premium pricing, when I teach raising prices, there's always at least a handful of people that are like, that's not ethical. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I don't want to just ignore that and not address it. My opinion is that your higher priced offer is only potentially unethical if, one, you don't deliver on what you promised during the sale. That's probably the number one reason you would be an unethical coach or consultant, is because you're not actually giving people what they expected when they were paying. You could be charging a much higher price than what the transformation is worth. Typically, this is going to hurt your sales, but there are some people who are excellent salespeople and not the best at actually helping people. And so there are a handful of people out there that charge a lot of money for kind of a crappy program. I know that's not you guys, but of course, that is an ethical consideration. Another ethical consideration is if you're not providing contract information or clear refund policy information before the person has agreed to the purchase. We're not going to get into a legal conversation here, but you have to make sure people know what they're agreeing to before they buy. And ultimately, if you really just don't care if your program's designed to actually deliver on the results that you're promising, and again, you're not guaranteeing results because you can't guarantee results, but there's a promise that your program is centered around. This is something that unfortunately is really common. People want to make a lot of money, but they don't care about refining their program process and making it the absolute best program that they possibly can. If that's you, I doubt it is, but if you really don't care about your clients getting results, then yeah, that's an ethical consideration that I would be concerned about. And the final thing is, if you have created some kind of solution to a problem that you are the only person in the world that can provide, and maybe it's like a life-saving service. I really don't think any of you here are in that boat, because if you were, you probably wouldn't need to be on this call. You'd probably be making a ton of money from your amazing, cancer cure or something like that. But yeah, if you've discovered the cure for cancer and you were charging $1 million a pop because you could, I feel like that could be a ethical concern, right? I'm going to guess that these don't apply to any of you guys, hopefully. And if they do, that's an area for improvement. But as long as you deliver on what you promised, you give your person a chance to review your terms and conditions before they choose to purchase, and you create more value for the person than what they've paid, there's really no dollar amount that suddenly becomes unethical. And I truly believe that the way you sell and deliver your stuff has far more impact on ethics than the price does. So I hope that this is helpful for any of you who have that guilt around charging for your services. The money itself is irrelevant. It's about, are you actually delivering more than what they're paying for? And are you delivering the service that was promised? So as long as the value that you're providing is higher than the cost that the customer paid for the program, your pricing is ethical. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful. Now, I know that a lot of you have probably heard this objection before, that I can't afford your program. Let me know in the chat if you've heard this before, that somebody wanted to work with you, but they said, oh, I really just can't make it work. It's too expensive. Okay, lots of yeses. So obviously, if it's you, you're not alone by any means. If you've never heard this before, you're either pricing your stuff way too low, or you're simply not selling enough to enough people. So if you've never had a price objection before, it's time to raise your prices, or it's time to get out there and try to sell to more people. So when somebody says your program is too expensive or that they can't afford your program, the truth is that they simply do not see the value in what you're offering compared to the price. This could be due to one or more of the following issues. These are the most common things I see in my clients that leads people to say that their program is too expensive. The first is a misalignment of your niche. So if you're trying to sell a solution to either a low value problem, or you're targeting people who generally don't have like any disposable income, that could be something that's leading to a lot of people saying that they can't afford it. Typically, you want to make sure that that program is valuable to the person and that they have some money to spend on solving it. It could also be a misalignment of your offer. We're actually going to go through this value equation. So I rearranged things last minute, but basically if you haven't created an offer that clearly provides more value than what you're asking for price-wise, then you're going to get more no's than yeses to your sales opportunities. And the third is a misalignment of your sales process. So this is a tricky one because a lot of times people always start to think, well, it must have something to do with my offer or who I'm selling it to, or maybe it's me, maybe nobody cares about paying money for my stuff. But a lot of times it's also something where it's a breakdown in the way that you're selling. And one of the biggest breakdowns is that you're focusing too much on the features of your program compared to the benefits. We spend a whole week worth of module on the sales process in my program because the way you sell your stuff is very important, and you could have an amazing offer that's actually quite valuable to the right person, but you're not presenting in a way that they're actually seeing that value during the sales experience. So usually if somebody is getting no's on their program, or if somebody's saying, I can't afford it, it's too expensive, those are the three areas I recommend looking at before you change your price, because in most cases, it's less about the price and more about one of those three things. Now, the word expensive is a very subjective and relative term. So if somebody says your program is too expensive, I don't want you guys to take on the belief that that means your program is overpriced. I want to show you a really clear example of how this works in real life. So let me know in the comments if you think $1,000 is expensive, and I want you to answer without any other context. Yeah, Monica says for what? Exactly. It depends. Some people say yes, some people say no. The answers are all over the place, right? So some people are saying, yes, $1,000 is expensive. Now, tell me in the chat, would you pay $1,000 for a cheeseburger? Yes or no? No. Heck no, absolutely not. Okay. I mean, what if it has like gold flakes and like it's or what is it, Wagyu beef and all the, you know, craziness that, I mean, there are people that sell like $50,000 hamburgers or cheeseburgers, but most of you would not pay even $1,000 for a cheeseburger. So now you can let me know, what about your dream house? Would you pay $1,000 for, and this doesn't necessarily have to be an image of your dream house, but imagine if somebody were offering your dream house for $1,000. People are saying, of course, in a heartbeat. Where do I send the money? Yes. Oh, but Madison says yes, but what's wrong with it? Haha. So there you go. That's an example of if you price things too low, people are like, what is wrong with this thing that it's not that, it's not priced that high. But this is a really great example of how your price is actually like 100% related to the perceived value of the offer. And that's why somebody telling you that your offer is too expensive is almost always a value issue, not a price issue. And it could also be related to the values that your target audience has. So I saw somebody mention, oh, Leanne says, is it in Ohio? That's, my husband's from Ohio, so we're not going to repeat that comment to him. But anyway, so I was going to say one of the comments here was that they're not going to pay $1,000 for a cheeseburger because they don't eat meat. Okay, well, maybe if I made it an Impossible Burger with gold dust and, you know, I don't know, I would never pay $1,000 for a cheeseburger. So I don't know what would have to be in it, but it could be that there's a value misalignment where you're not actually providing what the person wants, and some tweaks would actually lead to that purchase. But in a lot of cases, it's just that the overall value of the program is not either there at all, or it's not being presented effectively. That's all right, Leanne. I'm not gonna you know, hold you accountable to that Ohio statement. Okay, now another topic of request was the concept of the economy. And we're almost done, guys. So I know we're getting close to the hour. We're probably gonna go a little longer than an hour on the content, but I will leave space for questions. But as far as the economy goes, I know there's a lot of talk about the recession. There's people that say we're already in a recession. There's people that say that we're gonna avoid the recession. I try to avoid this stuff because it really doesn't affect the choices that I make in my life, but it is something that may affect your clients. So it's important to be thinking about. I believe that the solution to any potential recession or current recession is not to slash your prices. So, let's just get that off the table. It's not just because we're going to a recession does not mean you have to start discounting things. And the truth is that no successful entrepreneur or business responds to economic uncertainty by dropping their prices, unless you have some kind of like government funding that the government's actually controlling your price. We're talking about capitalism here, right? Like an actual free market economy. I want to challenge you to think about, can you think of one product or service that, again, doesn't have price control on it that has gotten cheaper in the past 2 years since we've had some economic uncertainty? Probably not. I mean, maybe you can think of one example here and there, but typically when the economy is challenged and inflation and recession and all that stuff is getting more expensive. And that's because that's what happens in a recession and in inflation. You can't drop your prices in response to an inflation issue because you are the one that's going to suffer. And yeah, maybe you'll sell more because, of course, if you're going to drop your prices, it's going to be easier to sell things, but it's not going to be a long-term solution to you. And it's not even necessarily the right solution. I want you guys, as we're going through this offer conversation, to really take this point home that in the context of a recession or financial challenges in the world, which, recessions come and go, this is not a new thing. If you're going to be in business for a long time, you're going to run into them. The solution is to be absolutely sure that you are solving a problem that your people already value and that you've created an offer for them worth buying. That is the solution to a challenging market. It is not to drop your prices. So that means now more than ever, it's critical that you're selling something of value that people already want and are willing to spend money to get. This always mattered, but the more money gets tight for people, the more they're going to be mindful of how they're spending it. And it's going to be super important that you speak to exactly what they want, that they see the value in investing in. And health is really something that people do value, even when the economy gets challenged, because your health affects your entire life. And if you're not in good health, there's not a lot you can do with the rest of your life. So in order to address this, I want to give you guys a quick tutorial on how to create more value. Now, I am very mindful of citing my sources. So this particular value equation comes from a guy named Alex Hormozy in a book called $100 Million Offers. It's a great resource. I recommend all my clients get it. But this is the value equation that he's come up with. So if we want to maximize the value of our programs and services, there's 4 different things we can do. The first is we can maximize the dream outcome, which means we're solving a problem worth solving and we're creating the potential for a transformation that's a high value transformation. The second is that we're increasing the perceived likelihood of success. So that can be either through showing lots of testimonials and case studies and demonstrating that you know what you're doing and can actually help people. And it can also involve your guarantees, your satisfaction guarantees, that kind of thing, to show people that there's a low risk to saying yes to working with you. We can also minimize the time to success. So how can you make the process faster? How can you make it really clear that people are making progress? How can you get quick wins for people as soon as they join? And how do you minimize the effort and sacrifice? How can you make it easier for people? How can you make it more convenient? How can you make it more fun? Anything that makes it less difficult for them is going to increase the value of your offer. So this is the visual. And like I said, this is from Alex Hormozy. Basically, this is a math equation. If you guys know division, basically you have the numerator and the denominator. The numerator at the top, you want that as high as possible. And the denominator on the bottom is you want as low as possible. So the closer you get to 0 on the bottom, the higher that value on the other side of the equal sign is. So if you can tweak any of these areas of your offer, really all of them is ideal, but maybe you start with 1 or 2 just to start playing around with improving it. That's going to increase the value for your customers and clients. So this is something that, again, you can just pick one. Maybe it's, making things easier for your client. Maybe it's beefing up your satisfaction guarantee to increase the likelihood of success or happiness. Lots of different ways that you can do this. Yeah, I mean, Felicia says just not a 0 on the bottom, because when 0 is, yes, technically if this was 100% 0, then this would be undefined. But let's say you could actually provide something instantly to somebody. If it takes half a millisecond for them to get the thing in the transaction, then that already makes that not 0. So it could never be 0, but the closer to 0 you can get down here, the better. Okay, so this is where I'm going to show you guys an exercise for brainstorming this process. And of course, like I said, this is being recorded, so feel free to come back to this. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but I want you to imagine if money, time, and location were no object for you, and you could do anything and go anywhere and be anywhere to provide your clients the best possible service and practically guarantee that they would get the result that they would desire. What would you want to provide? And before you start thinking about this, just know that this is not something that you actually have to provide or even would ever want to provide. It's just a thought exercise to consider all the ways that you can maximize the likelihood that somebody's going to get the result that you're promising and make it as easy and fast as possible, which will lead to more value. So examples of this would be things like you literally fly to their house and you live with them for a month and you cook for them, you shop for them, you do all of the meal prep. They don't even have to think at all about what they're going to eat. You set them up with a home gym, like a totally tricked out home gym, and then you're training them. Maybe it's 4 times a week. You're showing up, you're dragging them out of bed. It's like, let's go work out. And you're observing and monitoring that they're actually doing the workouts. Maybe you're shipping them an entire collection of customized supplements that are designed to help them with their unique health condition. Maybe you're including specific tests that you use to identify what kind of protocol adjustments you want to make. Maybe you go to their house and do an environmental makeover and help them remove toxins and, you know, maybe improve their circadian rhythms, put in blackout curtains, do a whole home makeover. Maybe you literally wake them up in the morning and get them outside to do a guided meditation with you. Or maybe you go on runs with them and you coach them on their running form while you're running. So this is, you know, for a lot of you, probably most of it's not stuff you're going to include, or maybe like half of it's not stuff you're going to include, but it is a thought experiment to think about what, if I wanted to guarantee that somebody would get the result, what would I do? Because then what you do after coming up with this list is you review each idea that you came up with, and then you decide, first of all, do you want to, or even can you provide that as a deliverable? So, you know, if you don't want to be flying to people's houses, then obviously that's not possible for you to provide. So you would say, no, I'm not going to provide that, or I can't provide that. But if you can't or don't want to provide it, could you create some kind of virtual tool or lesson or resource or deliverable that would actually replace that? So instead of going to somebody's house and cooking for them and shopping for them, what if you created a shopping list, and maybe it's 30 days worth of recipes that go along with a custom shopping list for them? Obviously, you're not there to do it for them, but you're basically making it so that they can do it for themselves without having to do any thought work at all. They just follow what you're saying on that resource. And then there's also the possibility that there's certain things that you can't provide as a deliverable. Potentially it's outside of your scope in the particular space of health that you're in. That's where maybe you could find, that you could create a guide to to find that service. So just as an example, I am not a personal trainer, but in my health programs, I like to give general recommendations for training because I worked with hormone health, and a lot of women that are experiencing hormone issues, at least my audience, were dealing with like overtraining, that kind of thing. So I gave them a high level overview about what to look for in a training program. And then, you know, that was something that would allow them to find the right trainer or the right program for them to follow. Or another option is that you can find a colleague that is able to provide that service or that tool, and they can actually create it for you as a bonus. So I also enlisted my personal trainer to create 12-week training programs that were designed to help minimize the risk of hormonal disruption but also allow somebody to continue strength training. So either you can help somebody find the resource, or you can find the resource and either trade or pay the person. I paid my trainer to make this, but this is something that you can still provide that service as part of your program. You just have to get a little creative with it. And then once you figure out exactly what deliverables you want to include and the way you want to include them, that's when you can start to hammer out the details about how you're going to deliver everything. So that's things like the size of the group, whether it's one-on-one all the way down to a small group. How much effort are you putting in? So is this like a DIY course, or are you actually custom creating everything for each individual? How much access to support are they going to get? Is it, again, DIY, or maybe there's a community where they can ask questions, or maybe they have 24-hour access to send you a text message? How are you going to deliver the content? So are you doing live calls? Are you doing pre-recorded calls? Are you making a private podcast? Are you creating PDFs? Lots of different ways that you can actually create content. And how often or how long are they going to have access to the content? So if it's work with you, like, is that Monday through Friday? Is that 24/7? Is it for 3 months? And then if it's a coaching program or a course, is that they get access to a year, they get it lifetime? Lots of different decisions you can make there. My recommendation for newer business owners is to start with a less scalable offer that's higher price, so closer to that one-on-one side of the spectrum, and get traction there before you start trying to go low ticket or high volume. Because as I said before, more access to you or more access to the support means you get to charge a higher price, and charging lower prices means you have to sell to more people, which can be difficult to do if you don't have a giant audience. And ultimately, whenever you're creating your offer, just remember that the more access to you that somebody gets, the higher the price should be. You don't have to include a ton of access to you if you don't want to, but you want to make sure that you are charging appropriately if there's a lot of you involved, because that makes it a not scalable offer. And your deliverables should address the biggest challenges and obstacles they're facing, the things they want to avoid. So, they might not want to do certain things as part of the process, and you want to make sure you're making that possible for them, making sure you're explaining the exact steps that they need to take to solve their specific challenges. And as Hormozy says in his equation, how do we make it faster, easier, more enjoyable, more effective, more likely to succeed? Making sure you're aware of the dream outcomes that somebody can achieve when they do solve these challenges. So what is it going to do for them in their life when they do solve the problem? And what else might come up after they've done this step, because that can inform other offers or different things you might add on to the service. And the more effectively you do this, the more value you're creating for your clients, and thus the higher price your services can be, and the easier the sale will be. So this is how you make your business recession-proof, is by creating a really high value offer that is a no-brainer yes for people to say yes to. And if you do want to sell a low ticket offer, I'm going to skim through this so we have time for questions, but you want to think about how would you deliver your program if you wanted to reduce the price by 10x and still help someone get the best result possible. So in that previous example of charging $2,000, what would you include if you wanted to charge $200 for the program and still help them get a great outcome? And obviously you'll have to adjust how you're helping them, and also probably reduce the complexity of the program, or how many steps there are, or how much of the problem you solve, because you really need to get a quick win for people in a low ticket program. And it has to be without any involvement from you. So that is something you can brainstorm about, but it does add a level of complexity that higher ticket offers do not have. And like I said, if you're going to sell low ticket, you have to either have a huge audience or a high paid ads budget, and you have to be good at ads, and they're getting harder all the time. So, I'm just going to fly through this, but basically if you do want to do a low ticket, just make sure it's either completely DIY or very little access to you, that it's not solving the entire program of your entire business in most cases, and you've constructed it in a way that it actually creates demand and desire for your signature program if you want to have a higher ticket offer that you're selling to. Okay, I think we are just about done here. So you will notice that I did not recommend any specific numbers for pricing during our conversation today, other than that, under $400 being what I would consider low ticket. And that's for a few different reasons. The first is that I do not know your unique audience, and I don't know what they're willing to spend to get the help that you provide. I also don't know what problem you solve and how much demand there is for that problem. I don't know what level of support you plan to provide, how much of you is going to be involved in that program. I don't know how or what your financial goals are. So, that's going to impact your pricing. Where you live in the country, or I know there's Canadians and other countries here, where you live in the world will affect that. So if you have higher financial goals, that's going to affect your pricing. And I don't know what those goals are. And this is a little hot take, but I also don't know how good you are at what you do, because this is something, we talked about that whole charge what you're worth concept in the beginning of this presentation. As much as I don't want you to think about charging what you're worth, I also want you to be realistic about the fact that the better you are at what you do, the more you can charge. We talked about ethics, we talked about value. If you're amazing at what you do, you can charge more money than if you're brand new and you're just getting started and you're learning how to help somebody. So I feel very strongly that you should price your services according to the level of success you've had for customers and clients. That doesn't mean you can't raise it. It doesn't mean you can't have a very quick increase of pricing. But, I charged probably, I think like $600 for a 6-month program when I first started. Not that I'm recommending that, but I went from that to now I charge over $1,000 an hour if people work with me one-on-one. So there's a process, there's a time factor in terms of getting really good at what you do and being able to command the pricing for that service. But that is part of the equation. And that's why, it's another reason why niching is so important, because the more niched you are, the more you can focus on getting amazing at solving one core problem. And that's going to allow you to raise your prices too. So, I don't think people just deserve to be paid money just because they decided they want to be paid. I think you need to get really good at what you do. And I think all of you are totally capable of getting really good at what you do with time and energy and attention. And so this is going to factor into what you charge, because it is something that I think sometimes people try to sweep it under the rug because they're trying to avoid that imposter syndrome mindset. But on the other hand, this is real people's lives that we're dealing with, and we need to provide a high quality service for people. So only you know the answers to these things, and that's why only you can come up with the appropriate price point for your services. If you are working with a business coach that's telling you a dollar amount to charge for your services, please don't listen to that, or please find a different coach, because only you know the answers and you need to be coming up with a price that you're really confident in. It doesn't mean it needs to be low. It doesn't mean you need to be scraping by, but I always like to show up in a sales conversation being totally confident that my client is getting more value than what I'm charging, and only you can make that decision for yourself. And keep in mind that it's always easier to raise your price than lower them down the road. So if you need to start a little low just to get things going, if you're a new business owner, there's no shame in that. Err on the side of starting low and work your way up as time goes on, as you develop more proof of concept for your offer, as you're getting more results for people. You can raise your prices at any time. And so don't feel like the price that you charge today is the price you have to charge tomorrow. Okay, so before we get into questions, I just wanted to let you know that there is an opportunity for you to learn how to pick your exact dollar amount. I have a profit planning guide for health and nutrition professionals that will actually teach you exactly how to set your exact dollar amount for your hourly rate and for your overall monthly revenue goals. So I don't want to leave you hanging here. I want you to be able to actually get a dollar amount here. So if you go to www.lauraschoenfeld.com/profit, PROFIT. That's where you can download this guide. I've had a lot of clients say this was one of the most valuable things that they've ever done for pricing, and it's totally free. So this is where you can really get the nitty-gritty details on picking numbers for the services that you're going to be providing. All right, so that is it. A little bit over time, but we still have time for questions. So I'm so happy that you guys were here with me. I hope that this was super valuable for you. If you want to connect with me, social media wise, I'm on Instagram primarily at Laura Schoenfeld RD, or you can check out, I have 2 websites, but my main website with a lot of my content is at lauraschoenfeldrd.com. And now I'm very happy to answer questions for you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura. That was jam-packed with information. I'm sure everyone's wheels are turning, lots of different thoughts for consideration. So we'll dive right into some of the questions that we received in the Q&A box. First things first, you touched on this very briefly at the end, kind of about mindset, imposter syndrome. Do you see this kind of really playing into hesitancy towards premium pricing, or, just the overall feeling from your clients? Is that getting in the way of them charging premium prices? And if it is, how can people start to address that?
Yeah, I mean, I probably could have done a whole hour on quote unquote imposter syndrome. And there's a lot of people out there that actually feel like that phrase imposter syndrome is like specifically targeting women and specifically making women feel like the stuff that they create is not good enough. I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, but it is something that you usually hear women saying, I have imposter syndrome. It's not as common to hear it from men. But I feel like the antidote to imposter syndrome is just getting really good at what you do. And that's where creating a really solid offer and getting clear on your niche and making sure you're solving a problem that people really care about, that's where you're going to start seeing that you're actually really great at what you do. I'm going to guess that most of you, if not all of you, have been educated in the health and wellness space. So you already have a baseline of education that's higher than the average person that you're going to work with. So there's that concept of as long as you're a few steps ahead of somebody, you can help them. And I am also of the mindset that we always need to be working on getting better at what we do. So one of my company core values is excellence. And so excellence to me means that you're never satisfied with what you know or what you're doing or how you're helping people. And you're always looking for ways to refine and improve your services. And if that's your mindset going into this, then you don't have to have imposter syndrome because you know that you're going to show up and serve people at the best of your capabilities. And as long as you're straightforward about what you can do, what you can't do, and you're really like, I think something I always was really cognizant of when I was working in the health space and even in the business space is not telling somebody I could do something if I couldn't, and really just being honest with them if it wasn't something I was able to help them with or it was outside of my scope. Because that is another way to eliminate imposter syndrome, because the only people who are actual imposters are the ones who are being untruthful about what they're able to do for you or what they're, how good they are at what they do, or if they're able to get you results. And so as long as you're honest and as long as you're continuing to work on your skills, then, you want to find that spot where you're like, I'm confident I can provide this much value. And I know that over time, I'm just going to get better at what I do the more I do it, and I can continue raising my prices. So hopefully that's helpful, because I think, imposter syndrome is just like a lot of times a reason for people to hold themselves back from doing something that they're actually probably pretty good at.
So true. I'm going to turn to the chat. I want to hear people's kind of reaction to this question. So how many people after this are now realizing that they have to raise their prices? So let us hear in the chat if you have now realized that. So for those people who are realizing that they're underselling their programs, their offerings, what's the right approach to this? Are they just going on the back end of their website or Practice Better and actually adjusting those prices? Or are they, re-looking at that offer? What's the right way to raise your prices?
Yeah, I mean, there is the school of thought that says just go in there and change the number. So if you're charging $1,000, just make it 2,000, which you can do. And I've done that before. Like I said, I started pretty low when I started my business, and this was back in 2014. So, the world of internet nutrition services was very different back then. And it was, a whole different ball game. But I raised my prices pretty substantially over the course of that 8 years. And it was always kind of this kind of recurring thought to think, okay, is it time to raise the price? Is it time to raise the price? And as an example, we just raised our price on our MBA program recently because I started to get into this feeling of like, wow, we're giving so much value. And I really think that now the price is no longer appropriate for what people are getting from this experience. And so I didn't double the price, but I did increase it. And that to me felt like an appropriate amount for the transformation that people are getting without it suddenly becoming like super inaccessible for people. So, so that's how I've always approached things. And I do think it needs to be an intuitive decision on your part. If you're going in there and doubling your prices and then you get on a discovery call and you're like sweating your face off because you're like, oh, I don't want to say this price, then that's probably not going to work very well. So I like to be a little bit more incremental. And that's where looking at your offer can really be valuable, because you could say, okay, well, I want to charge $2,000. That would be amazing. What could I tweak about what I'm already selling to make it worth $2,000+ or make it worth $20,000 in the long term for somebody? So that is something that, again, it has to feel good for you, because if it feels bad to raise your price, then it's not going to work. And then you're going to have this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, well, I raised my price, now nobody's buying. Again, very rarely is it about the dollar amount. It does a lot of times come down to your energy behind the offer and you really truly believing that somebody else is getting more value than what you're charging for your service.
Yeah. Lots of good comments in the chat about that topic. So lots of questions also about displaying prices versus not displaying prices. Some people, there's a lot of different kind of thoughts about this, pros and cons, different schools of thought about whether that's on your, your custom booking page on Practice Better or your website. What's your opinion? Do you display prices? Do you not? Do you have a time when it's appropriate versus when you kind of keep things hidden?
Yeah. So this is definitely, there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. Really, there's two core ones. One is that you should display your prices, and the other is that you shouldn't display your prices. Those are kind of the extreme ends of things. I tend to fall a little bit more in the middle. For my business, we have some offers that people can just go onto my website and buy right now. And of course, the price is there, right? Like I'm not going to like hide the price until you're about to put your credit card in or something. So I want people to know if they're going to buy something that's more of my like standalone course or workshop or something, that the price is very clearly displayed. When it comes to more of the higher ticket stuff that I feel really needs a longer conversation about what the program includes, if it's a right fit for somebody. My higher ticket stuff requires an application. So I don't just let people go and buy stuff from me. They do actually need to apply if they're going to do one of my coaching programs. And in that case, I personally don't share my prices for two different reasons. One, because sharing the price without the actual offer being presented first is, again, taking the context away. It was kind of that example of like asking if $1,000 is expensive. It depends. It depends on what you're getting, right? And so if somebody sees the price before they even know what they're getting, they might make a judgment about whether or not they can afford it before they've even seen what they're paying for. So that's why I don't do my pricing on display for my higher ticket stuff, because I don't want somebody ruling out what's possible for them just because they have a concept of what their budget is and they don't even think about like, what is the program even going to provide? But there are some people who are uncomfortable with that. They don't want to keep their prices, quote unquote, hidden, which I'm not hiding anything. If somebody emails me and asks, I'm happy to tell them, but I'm not like displaying it all over the internet. I do think you're taking a risk that people will rule themselves out before they even get in a conversation with you about potentially working together. But you'll also get less people that get on calls with you and then like, are totally freaked out by the price. So it's kind of a personal decision there. I do think the price point will affect it. Because again, if your program is like $50, like a course or something, versus if it's like, $5,000, then maybe that's going to affect whether or not you show the price. And then the last thing to consider is the fact that if you're going to change your price and you've listed it places on the internet, sometimes it can be really hard to track down all the different places you've listed it. So there can be a little bit of a tech challenge to having your exact prices displayed. So if you don't want to if you want to not have zero prices shown, then what I would typically recommend is giving a range or saying, working together starts at this amount. So that way, if you do end up raising your prices, you don't have to like go scour the internet to find every single place you've ever mentioned the price to try to change it. Because there's nothing worse than somebody thinking it's going to be one price and then showing up and finding out that it's different. So that's some things to consider. And I do think it needs to be a personal decision because if it's not going to work for you to hide your prices or keep them until there's a conversation happening, then don't do it. You get to test whatever is going to work for you in your business.
All right, one more question before we wrap things up for today's session. Let's say that you have had someone who enrolled in your program and they very quickly decide that it's not a fit for them. You've maybe charged up front, or you've started them on a payment plan and they've asked for a refund. How are you protecting what you've already provided them or the work that you've done, while also balancing client expectations with things like refunds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like it really depends on the service you're providing. I recommend to my clients that they don't do refunds on any sort of one-on-one or customized services that have already been provided, because you've already given that person the service, and it's your time, it's your attention, it's your brain power, and you can't take that back. It's not like a sweater that somebody can go return and now you have it back, right? So you've given the thing already, and they need to have paid for that ahead of time before you've given it to them. And I do not recommend unless you're really just trying to avoid a lawsuit or something, I typically don't recommend refunding those kind of services that have already been provided. Now, if you have something that's a more scalable offer, or you've signed them up for a program that still has some time left on it, that's where you can consider including in your refund policy, which again, you want to make sure that this policy is really clear, letting people know that, hey, after 30 days, if it's not a fit, let me know and I'm willing to release you from the rest of your financial commitment, or I give a prorated refund, which, maybe is 50% of what you paid. So that would be something that you could do if you're doing one-on-one. And if you're doing something that's not one-on-one, like a group program or a course, it really just depends on how irresistible you want your offer to be. We do a 30-day no questions asked refund policy for our NBA program, because my philosophy is that I do not want somebody in the program that regrets being there. And I don't want somebody who is joining and then feeling like they didn't get what they were promised. I just want to avoid any of that possibility at all. And so that's why I include a 30-day no questions asked full refund policy, because I'm like, listen, I know this program works. We have a 3% refund rate. So 97 out of 100 people that work with us love the program. So I'm not worried that there's going to be a couple of refunds here and there, because I would much rather guarantee that I'm going to have a good customer experience than be super, worried about, oh no, they paid and now they're going to ask for their money back. So, it is something that you want to make sure you're doing appropriate onboarding and making sure they're getting quick wins so that they're less likely to ask for a refund in that case. But that was a decision we made because we work with a lot of people who have had bad experiences with business coaches before. And that was something that was really scary for them to say yes to making a substantial investment after maybe they've had a bad experience before. So I was like, listen, I don't want you to have that experience again. That is not the way we do business. So we're going to let you try the program out for 30 days. And if it's not what you were looking for, no worries, we'll give you your money back. So you guys could do the same thing. It doesn't have to be 30 days. It could be, we had a 14-day return policy on one of our health programs one time. But that always made me feel like, extra confident that somebody would not regret the purchase. And for every person that asks for a refund, we probably get another 10 people that were on the fence that joined. So it's actually a wise business decision too, because it's making a more irresistible offer. It's making a much higher level of psychological safety for somebody to say yes to that bigger ticket investment. And it's very unlikely that I'm getting more refunds than the number of people that wouldn't have joined that are now joining because of that refund policy. So it is something to consider. Again, I don't give refunds on one-on-one services, but if it's a group program that didn't take extra work for me to serve that person, if they're in there for 30 days, then I'm very happy to do a refund policy like that to make it even a bigger no-brainer for people to work with us.
Amazing. So as we wrap up today, I'd love to hear from everyone. If you're feeling more confident in regards to pricing, let me know in the chat. Thank you so much, Laura, for your time today, for sharing your expertise and your wisdom. I'm sure that can see all the yeses rolling through in the chat. Everyone learned a lot. Tomorrow we have day 4, which is going to be all about marketing your program. Be sure to keep an eye on your inbox for today's replay, lots of other resources. We've got tons of content coming your way through your inbox. So be sure to keep an eye out. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 4.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.